Whew, the early 2000s were quite the mixed bag for the Frogger series. On console, he was turned into a joke, the star of a horrible reboot that ditched the gameplay the series was known for entirely. But at the same time, Frogger would also further explore the traditional tile-hopping gameplay on the Game Boy Advance, to much greater success than his PS2 misadventures, both critically and commercially. Money talks, and the numbers showed that people didn't want a gross 3D platforming Frogger, they wanted something that more closely resembled that classic 2D gameplay. So thankfully, the reboot series was abandoned. Console Frogger from now on would continue to explore the tile-hopping formula with Frogger Beyond, a brand new next-gen Frogger game that would take the Frogger we know and love to the next level. Well, it was next-gen at the time, I guess, not so much anymore, but yeah, with how all over the place this series has been so far, I'm almost scared to play this one. So far, Frogger has ranged from awesome to average to gruelingly frustrating to mind-numbingly awful and borderline offensive. This game could be any one of those, so I'm kinda terrified. Well, at least the front cover's giving me a decent impression. I do like his new design. Seems to be a little bit similar to the one on the Lost Wand cover, which does make sense since this released around the same time. Not really a fan of that smug expression though, but the background paints an interesting image of what to expect. Classic Frogger, but with levels that are out of this world. Jesus, look at that face. Well, looks like Ponker Frogger's having fun at least. Let's hope we can have some fun too. What I'm hoping from this one is good level design that's challenging, maybe even difficult, but fair. That's what I want, a good, fair challenge. So let's see if Frogger Beyond is the one to do it. I'm gonna be playing the GameCube version. There is also an Xbox version, which probably runs better. I don't know, I don't own it. The PS2 version only came out in Japan for some reason, though. I don't know, maybe the PS2 was so soured by the Great Quest it wanted nothing to do with the series. I mean, if the PS2 could get a disease, it'd probably be from this disc. Let's hope I don't get my GameCube anything with this one. Oh, that's a cool title screen, I like that. Frogger's in-game design further distances himself from those human-like proportions in favor of being more frog-like, and he... Why does the title screen have a Frogger rap? I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of a banger. I mean, it's stupid as hell, but hey, I'm a sucker for that banjo riff. That's pretty fun, albeit really silly. Doesn't top the DK rap though, that one's still the best. Oh, Buck Bumbles is pretty good too though. I'm getting off topic. The game's intro takes us deep into Firefly Swamp, where Frogger and Lumpy are reminiscing over his previous adventure.
That was a long journey for you all the way to the Temple of the Frog and back.
Oh, I guess Temple of the Frog is canon with this game? Yeah, it takes place directly after. Huh, I didn't really expect the portable games to share a continuity with the console ones, especially since that one was under the Frogger's Adventures name and this one isn't. Either way, Frogger's birthday is tomorrow, and now he's finally of age to make the transition to adulthood, and in Firefly Swamp, it's tradition for young frogs to meet with the Frog Elder Council and overcome a number of challenges to earn their rite of passage.
I know, I've heard all about it.
It's pretty fun hearing a younger Frogger talk about it like a naive kid who isn't all that enthused about the idea.
I don't know, but hanging out inside with a bunch of old guys sounds pretty boring to me.
And man, his voice is way more fitting this time. He actually sounds like a little frog dude, instead of whatever the hell this was supposed to be.
Find a princess before I bust!
And these new designs, they're so much better. Frogger still dresses similarly, that much from his Great Quest design is still there, but everything else was totally overhauled. He's smaller, pudgier, cuter, those teeth are gone, thank God. I'd say it feels like a 3D interpretation of his Game Boy Advance sprites, even down to the way he smiles and bobs his head when he's idling. It's really great. Even Lumpy, like, he made my eyeballs want to crawl out of my head and burrow into the ground before. Thankfully, this design here is significantly better. After a quick tutorial, Frogger then enters the Great Frog Council, where he... Oh, no! What the hell is that? Did Frogger just enter the Great Frog Vagingi? Like, what the hell was that supposed to be? I mean, maybe it's supposed to be a belly button or something, but either way, did nobody really have any issue with this? Did nobody look at this and say, that's wrong? Like, this looks beyond suggestive. Why not enter the frog's mouth? That would have looked normal at least. God, how did this get by? Well, anyway, once Frogger enters the council, he's He's then greeted by the Frog Elders, who explain to him that his many prior adventures have left them very impressed. Frogger is a frog of great potential, and now to complete the coming-of-age ritual, he must prove himself by completing a journey through 7 mystical worlds, each one represented by a different Frog Elder. So more or less the plot is just that to complete the ritual you gotta beat 7 worlds of Frogger. Well, I guess we now know why George Costanza never grew up. He couldn't beat Frogger, dude. Between each world you'll get another cutscene introducing you to the next Frog Elder. And oh my lord, are these guys some characters. They're really over-animated. They're always moving everything at once. It's really ridiculous looking, but I kinda like it in a weird way.
I wanted to give you a glimpse of what is possible in the world that you are about to encounter.
This guy here's a Morpheus parody. Oh god, what a time capsule that is. Remember the early 2000s when everything just had to be a Matrix parody? Alright, here we go. The gameplay is pretty close to Temple of the Frog. You've got the tile hopping, you can eat butterflies to get 1-ups, the super hop skips a tile, and the shoulder buttons will rotate Frogger in place so you can line up those jumps. Frogger also has a new high jump move where you can jump up super high in place. This is just for collecting coins that are hovering above a tile, that's really it. I guess you can use it to get over enemies, but most of them move way too slow for it to really work most of the time. There's never really any situations where you'd use it over the super hop, so it doesn't really add that much if you ask me. I think it would have been cooler if this move was used for like jumping up and grabbing switches or something, or maybe to get up to platforms above you. I don't know, something more than just getting coins. There's definitely a lot more they could have done with this, and they just kind of didn't. And that's really it. Yeah, save for that one new move, it's all exactly the same as Temple of the Frog, and it still works just as great in 3D. The tile hopping isn't as tight as on Game Boy Advance, I'd say. I think 2D games in this style just kind of inherently work a little bit snappier, but it still feels really great. The only thing is that you can't use a control stick, which I think is fine, but the GameCube doesn't exactly have the best D-pad, even if I do prefer D-pads for this type of game. It's not hard to get used to, but I still think they should have had the option for both. At least tapping away at it does still feel really good. It still has that one-to-one feedback, one tap being one hop. I do like the hopping sounds from previous games more though. I felt they stood out a lot more and really helped give another layer of feedback for the movement. Now it's a lot more subtle. Instead of hearing the croaking, you now hear the sounds of Frogger's feet plopping down on each tile. It still does the trick, but not quite as effectively. Frogger Beyond continues in the footsteps of the GBA games by ditching collectible frogs in favor of simply getting to the end. The focus has fully shifted from exploration to focused and challenging action through a linear level. New to the game are these power-ups. I know the first game had power-ups as well, but this time they work a lot differently. Between levels, you can use the coins you've collected to purchase these from the shop in the hub world. Oh, you have to hear this song every time you're here, huh? Okay, yeah, not gonna lie, it's starting to get a little bit on my nerves. There's 3 of these power-ups total. There's a speed-up one, there's a super tongue attack to let you lick up enemies, and finally there's a shield that turns Frogger invincible for a short amount of time. I didn't really use these that much because I just don't really like skipping parts of the game. I'd rather complete it all fair and square, but they are really good for getting by chunks that do give you an extra hard time. Personally though, I only ever really used them just to skip chunks I've already got by because I just want to get to where I died. So at least for me, they were really good for getting back to where I was much faster. These environments are actually pretty dynamic. There's a lot of moving camera angles, a lot of slants and slopes, a little more verticality. Hopping around a bend feels really satisfying. It all helps make the world feel a little bit more organic rather than just a series of video gamey tiles, right? Some of these levels look really lush and colorful. A lot of it looks really good. A lot of practical set pieces to remind you that it's this whole other world and, you know, not just a video game level. The water level, for example, it's littered with coral and boats and these mysterious ancient statues with a pulsating glow. One of my favorite set pieces here is this really cool take on that classic truck scenario, this time with these high-tech flying cars that soar over this futuristic city, letting you take it all in as you hop from vehicle to vehicle. It's so freaking cool. At this point, I was feeling like that log hopping was getting a little bit samey, so Frogger Beyond thankfully finds many ways to spruce it up with a lot of visual flavor. Not to say the graphics are really good overall, though. There are a lot of good things about them, like Frogger's new look and the environments and the interesting settings, but certain aspects of the visual design really clash with the rest of it. The one that sticks out the most to me is the enemy design. Some of them look fine, but a lot of times I don't even know what I'm looking at or how to interpret it. These lobsters, they look like a strange red mass that hardly even resembles what it's supposed to be. The enemies in the high-tech level are really frickin' strange. I get they're supposed to be computer bugs, you know, like computer parts that act like little bugs. It's a really cute idea. But the models and animations, they're they're crude at best, and the top-down angle just doesn't really do them justice, unlike the side-on 2D sprites on Game Boy Advance, which looked a lot better. One problem I did have with the enemies is that sometimes it doesn't seem like they adhere to the grid terribly well. It'll look like you understand their path and you'll know what space to land on to be safe, yet their model will brush an extra tile further and kill you, even though it looked like that wasn't going to happen. It's almost as if the hitboxes weren't properly adjusted, so sometimes they extend slightly beyond the tiles they're supposed to cover. It wasn't a constant issue, but there certainly were a number of times where I'd find myself yelling, come on, how'd that hit me? One more thing I found really finicky was landing on moving platforms. In prior Frogger games, you had to time the jump so you'd land on the platform when it moved into place, because, like, no duh, of course, so why wouldn't it be like that? So obviously, after like, what, 5 proper Frogger games, my instinct is to do the same here, but every time I would fall right through the platform. I even thought the game was straight up broken for a little bit. It just kept on happening. Well, it turns out the rules have changed a bit. Instead of timing the jump, you're now supposed to press the button when the platform's directly in front of you. Regardless of the timing, Frogger will always gravitate to the platform you lined up. I can see why they made this change, because timing jumps was something that always was a little bit finicky, and this does solve that, but that doesn't mean they had to get rid of doing it the old way. Why does this not also work? Why do I fall through platforms, like blatantly falling through solid freaking objects, just because I tried to do it the way the older games did? That just doesn't make any sense. Well, at least the rules are consistent. I never had a problem doing this once I knew what it was I was doing wrong, but the problem lies in just that. I had to figure out I was doing something wrong, despite my actions and inputs being perfectly sound. Legibility is something this game is not very good at. Another example, this snake enemy right here. It's a really cool enemy. It's kind of like the ghost in Swampy's Revenge. It doesn't stick to the grid, and that makes it a little bit more challenging to get away from. But this enemy isn't introduced properly. It just kind of appears when you get there and vanishes when you get past it. There's no animation, no entry, no exit. It's just like, yeah, the model's there when you're on this space, and now it's not when you're on that space, and I don't know, it kind of confused me. These jack-o'-lanterns too, they spew fire and they rotate left and right, so, you know, you could draw the conclusion that they're going to spew fire in whatever direction they're facing. But no, it always shoots in the same direction. So why are they looking left and right? Why do you have nothing that telegraphs the path? Why do you have visual cues that are antithetical to the gameplay? Okay, one more, just because this is the absolute worst example of confusing stuff like this in this game. It's during this space level. So I get through this part and I land on this warp, and then it... I have no idea what just happened. That was so fast, like... What? So what's happening is that it warps you to a minigame where Frogger is wearing a spacesuit and you gotta hop between different lanes to dodge the oncoming obstacles, but it starts you right in front of one, so unless you know to move right away, you're gonna die before you even know what you're looking at. I didn't even know I was looking at Frogger for a second. It just, what? The checkpoints do the same thing. They start you right in front of something that kills you. You practically have to already be mashing the D-pad before you spawn or you die immediately. Okay, so I know that was a lot of examples, but I don't want to make it seem like this is the whole game. It doesn't happen a ton, but even still, these little confusing moments, they would really pull me out. They really should have been ironed out. When you're dropping a player into a brand new situation, you gotta reel them in slowly. You gotta use your visual cues to teach them what's happening before it happens. You can't just throw them headfirst into a wall and kill them instantly and expect them to learn how to play the game that way. Luckily, outside of all of this, the level design is actually pretty solid. This is more or less what I wanted for the next Frogger game. Well, maybe not so much a means of like new mechanics or expanding on the formula, but it certainly does offer the amount of challenge I was hoping for. This game isn't easy, but it's pretty fair, at least outside of those infrequent confusing moments. I did die a lot, but I usually didn't get frustrated because I was having a lot of fun learning how to dodge and get through these patterns. Some patterns in this game are so freaking good. The one with the blades coming out of the walls, oh, mwah, challenging, fair, fun as hell, that's what I want. Sometimes sometimes they'll change up the gameplay a slight bit to add some variety, and this started out pretty cool, being things like grinding down a vine to get to the next area. It's kind of like a loop-de-loop in a Sonic game, just a quick and fun set piece to break up the action, a little bit of eye candy before the next challenge. But later they start doing things that do not work. In the snow level, for instance, you'll do a little bit of snowboarding. Frogger on a snowboard, isn't that a sight? If you ever want to see Frogger on a skateboard, you can play Evolution Skateboarding. They had him as a guest character, along with a bunch of other Konami characters. That's actually where that skateboarding minigame in Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance came from. It's his great quest model though, so the only reason you're gonna play as him is to watch him crash and break his face. Okay, that's actually a pretty good reason. You'll do that here a lot too, wiping out, because the snowboarding controls are really stiff and tank-like. I ended up crashing a lot.
Hey, what is this? Frogger Gear Solid?
Did that just happen? I'm not gonna lie, that's actually kind of cool. Anyway, the snowboarding controls. You like steer left and right with the D-pad, but it's not like you're leaning into a turn like in other snowboarding games. No, it just changes what direction is forward. Kinda like you're controlling a Resident Evil character or something. It just doesn't control well. I guess it wasn't too hard to get by, it only took me about 10 minutes of retrying, but this segment just isn't very good. The biggest offender of this, though, is the minecart section. Good freaking lord, guys. This is it's just terrible. You gotta lean left and right, and you gotta jump to avoid obstacles, but the timing is so precise, and the minecart's momentum is so nonsensically inconsistent. It'll just randomly speed up and slow down out of nowhere, completely ignoring all physics. You also die in one hit, which is fine for the tile hopping, but for something as inconsistent and difficult as this, it's a damn miracle I ever got by it. This section took me literal hours. I think it took me 4 hours to beat, might have even been 5. I was stuck on this thing for way too long. How am I supposed to gauge when to jump when I'm suddenly going uphill and the game doesn't give me a side-on angle? I can't see where the obstacle is because the cart's in the way. Why does it just speed up here for no reason? Wait, what, that killed me? What, this little tiny piece of snow, that killed me? Really? Oh, and I know what you guys are thinking. Why not use the shield power-up? Well, let me tell ya, I did. I used all of them, and I still couldn't beat it. But since I hit retry when I got a game over, it saved that I used them all, and I had no coins to buy anymore, and you can't revisit older levels to get more coins. That retry button is a beginner's trap. If you want to keep your power-ups, you have to reset the game. Don't hit either option. No, it saves that you've used them all up, and they're gone forever. You can't get them back until you beat this level, so it forces you to beat the level with no power-ups after only getting one shot at trying it with them, which is exactly what I had to do. How come switching tracks never works, huh? It does sometimes, but I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. Look at these tracks, right? It's a junction. Your instinct is to lean into it, so when the turn comes up, you take it, but no, that doesn't work. Look at this, it's not working. What you have to do is tap the D-pad in that direction, not before, but when you're parallel to the other track. It's like you're switching rails in a Sonic game or a Ratchet & Clank game, but that makes no sense here. Why have the junction? Why lead the player to believe the mechanic is going to function one way when it functions a different way? Again, it does work once you know what to do, but that's Frogger Beyond's biggest problem. The rules being consistent and working, that doesn't mean much if the rules don't make any sense, now do they? They're contrary to the visual cues. The game teaches you to react one way when you're supposed to react the opposite way. This is terrible game design, and it's so frustrating because beyond its hiccups, beyond the hard-to-grasp, nonsensical rules, beyond the worst difficulty spike I've played in a long-ass time, there's a pretty good game here. So let's get back to the positives, because there are positives here, like the boss fights. Yes, they did a great job with the boss fights. They all feel completely unique, and they're all really fun to figure out. This mech fight was really cool. You gotta dodge lasers and heat-seeking missiles, and then when he ground pounds, you gotta make him land here. I died a lot in this one. It's actually pretty hard, but oh boy, is it fun to finally pull off. There's a really cool callback to this fight too, where this time you'll have to instead guide those homing missiles back into him. And this octopus boss, what a cool idea. Dodging the 8 legs as you hop around in a giant circle, trying to activate these switches. I think my favorite was this Jack-in-the-Box boss. You'll hop around the arena, dodging everything he throws at you as you try to charge up these statues that'll hit him with a big beam attack. It's so satisfying dodging everything and whittling away at each one, fighting to get everything lined up as you avoid getting blasted. Just like the Lost One on Game Boy Advance, Frogger Beyond has some seriously fun boss fights. However, there is one that, like the minecart mission, it took me like 4 to 5 hours to beat because of how poorly designed it is. I think you guys all know the one. It made me so mad I wanted to tear my arms off and throw them like boomerangs. The fire level boss. This thing, I don't know what it is, a robotic bat. Again, the enemy designs, I don't even know what I'm looking at, but basically what you gotta do is dodge its fire attacks, navigate your way to the stage's 4 corners, hit all the 4 switches, and the boss takes damage. You then get brought up to the next level, rinse and repeat 3 times, and you've won. It all works on paper, and I do like the idea of hopping from one corner to the next, dodging stuff along the way, but the attacks are so sudden and so poorly telegraphed, they are nearly impossible to dodge. The first phase is fine, it's really easy actually, just a way to teach you the ropes of what you can expect from the fight, and that's good, but the second phase it starts shooting a lot more fire, and it didn't take me long to realize how this pattern worked. He targets where you are when he starts firing, and it trails off from that tile one by one, so if you hop really far from where you are right when he starts shooting, and make sure not to backtrack into the flames, you're pretty much good. But the final part of this fight is where I have a bone to pick. I swear every time I'd get here, I would just die instantly. Fire would shoot out, Frogger would die, every time, and since you die so suddenly, there's no way to tell what's even happening. I cannot learn the pattern if the attack kills me before I can even see what he's doing. For the longest time, I could only dodge these by total fluke, though later I found out that it doesn't fire at you if you're on one of these moving platforms, so I thought that in maybe being patient, I could cheese it. Whatever, I'll do anything. I'll wait here as long as it takes if it means I can just go back to liking the game again. But guess what? It didn't work, because you have to hit the switches in a certain amount of time or they all reset. At a point I had these phases down to a T, dude. Like I could zip right through them practically blindfolded, but dear lord, if I ever have to do these phases again, I'm gonna lose my goddamn mind. Having to replay the same part over and over and over just to get shot dead in 1 second at the next part? Why couldn't there at least be checkpoints? At least make me lose all my lives before starting the entire thing over and making me replay these things I've replayed again and again and again just to get one single shot at it. Eventually I got so frustrated, I went to the drawing board. I watched back my gameplay recordings in slow motion just to figure out what the hell is going on here. And after watching it back, I realized what was happening. I recognized a pattern. He fires 4 flames around you, all at least 2 tiles away, and then he quickly fires at the space you're on. So basically what you have to do is wait in a single space. You can't be moving at all or those flames will hit you. You have to be perfectly still and then hop exactly 1 space away in any direction the moment you see those flames, so the second blast doesn't hit you. I had to slow down a recording in order to figure that out. The boss does not telegraph its attacks at all. There's no sound cues, no visual cues, no markers to tell you where it's going to land around you and then on you. It doesn't give you enough time to react. There is so much wrong with this. This is one of the most frustrating, horrible boss fights I've ever played in my life. You know, I'm willing to bet good money that a lot of people watching this video who grew up with this game never finished it because of this boss fight. If they even got past the minecart mission, that is. Like, why does the game have these horrible, awful difficulty spikes? I was having fun. I was actually really enjoying the game despite its flaws. All those little issues, I can learn, I can get past them, I can forgive if I'm having fun, which I was, but this is too much. Come on. Why? Why? It's a damn shame very few parts of this game are so ridiculously flawed because I had a great time with the rest of it. Again, this is what I'm looking for in a Frogger game. Good, fair challenge. But the game isn't consistently fair, and that is going to be a big deal breaker for a lot of people. At least the final level is really good. It combines the themes and challenges from all previous levels. Yeah, including the minecart, but at least it is really short-lived and not nearly as broken as before. This was a great final challenge, so the game does at least end on a high note. It's just pretty damn rocky getting there. Frogger Beyond is easily the most polarizing Frogger game yet. It might even be one of the most polarizing games I've ever reviewed. I can't call this a bad game. I really want to call it a good game, but there's too much wrong with it to make it easy to recommend. If they just removed these 2 things and made the visuals a little bit better at conveying how the game works, this would have easily been the best Frogger game yet by a landslide. But instead, said parts of it are the best Frogger game yet, and other parts are amongst the worst in the entire series. If you can tank through those parts, there is a really good Frogger game in here, but whether or not you want to deal with that to get to the good stuff, well, that's on you. Personally, I'm hoping these next two are the ones to give us a more polished version of what Frogger Beyond is going for. Dude, we're like almost through all of these. There's only a handful of them left, just like these two and then like one more, but yeah, I'm really hoping one of these two gives me that next-gen, challenging, but polished tile hopper I've been looking for, because as it stands, The Lost One and Game Boy Advance still reigns supreme for me. I'm really looking forward to seeing how these two guys compare, so yeah, I'll see you guys down the road with even more Frogger. I'll see you guys then.
Buddy, what's popping? This is probably simultaneously the worst and best Frogger game I've ever played. I think this is definitely one of the more interesting episodes though, because I don't know, it was really neat being conflicted for once about it. Hey, if you want to support the channel, I've got a $1 podcast up on patreon.com. It's a great way to support the show, and you get to hear Brady and me talk for like an hour about nothing.